not support conservative candidates. So the fact of the matter is, a vote for Mike McIntyre is a vote for Nancy Pelosi. And I will be very candid and confess to you that when I was with Jesse Helms and Elizabeth Dole, when I was working with McIntyre's folks in his office, we were dealing with local issues. You know, McIntyre was a very strong social conservative. Because he was such a strong social conservative, I kind of thought, well, you know, he's a pretty conservative Democrat member. You look at his votes, he votes for the labor unions every single time. He voted for the failed Obama stimulus. He's voted to keep in place the death tax, which really was a shocker for me, considering how rural not only this district is, but his former district was. And then in addition to that, you got all these trips overseas to Rome and everywhere else. And we went and dug a little further. He is one of 2 members of Congress that leased 3 vehicles. I can understand leasing 1 vehicle, but not 3. And so there's a lot there that we got to get out. But I have found, and I'm a pretty good judge of this when I'm out on the campaign trail, the thing that sells the best is voting more than 90% of the time with Pelosi when she was Speaker. And so we're going to focus in, you know, on that message. And that's something that, quite honestly, a lot of people are shocked when they hear that the first time. So I need your help to get the word out. You know, I firmly believe that we've got to get back to the principles of free enterprise and a much more limited government. And we need more people like Lauch Faircloth in the U.S. Senate, that's for sure. Senator Faircloth, thank you for coming. Give Senator Faircloth a applause. When now that Lauch has shown up, I got to tell a story. When I was with Jesse Helms, Faircloth was in the Senate then. And that was probably the best time I ever had in the U.S. Senate was when Jesse Helms was there and Lauch Faircloth was there with him. And I remember I used to handle agriculture for Helms, and we had a meeting one day. There were a bunch of folks in the room, and at that time everybody was ganging up on tobacco, you know, wanting a tax increase and everything else. And the whole world was against tobacco except for Lauch Faircloth and Helms. They were the only 2 who were fighting back. And Helms got to explaining a little bit and said, you know, he said, you know, too much of anything is bad for you. He said, hell, if you ate pork chops 3 times a day, that wouldn't be good for you. And Lauch piped up and said, lamb, Jesse, lamb. So I have a lot of fond memories of Lauch Faircloth and Senator Helms serving in the U.S. Senate together. I can assure you this, Obamacare would have never passed the U.S. Senate if Lauch Faircloth and Helms had been there. They would have gummed it up so bad that everybody would just want to get out of town so they wouldn't have to deal with them. And you know, that's a good thing. That was part of it. So, but anyway, this race is critically important. I appreciate y'all coming out on your Saturday morning to join us, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. But just to reiterate again, there's a clear choice in this race, not only at the presidential level, but also in this race between me and Mike McIntyre. My first vote is not going to be for Nancy Pelosi. His is. And he's got a track record that proves that when she was Speaker before, he voted with her more than 90% of the time. You know, that says it all, I think. But I'd be happy to answer any questions that any of you may have, and just want to thank you for coming out. Brent, you got a question?
No, but I do have an announcement that obviously you might not know. David has been invited to speak at the National Republican Convention Monday evening, sometime between 5 and 7, is that correct?
That's right.
And the Victory Center in Smithfield is going to be having a viewing of that, so anyone that would like to come up, I think this is a great honor for David and for North Carolina, and especially Johnson and Sampson counties. I mean, to have someone to speak, and I'm really proud of what David has done. And I had something prepared a little. You know, I had very prepared in Johnson County. I figured he won't be introducing this time. I won't go there this time. But David has really been the candidate that we need this time. You know, timing is everything. You know, I'd rather be lucky and have good timing than a lot of other things. But David is the man we need for now. And he has worked at it. I have watched him closely and from afar. he has by far worked most candidates to the ground in his traveling and in his meeting people, in his raising money, and which he needs plenty of, because his opponent certainly has plenty of it, and he's already told you with the labor unions behind him, they got plenty to throw at him. So if you haven't contributed, David, whether it's $10 or $2,500, you need to contribute. But David is not just, as I've seen a lot of candidates do, try and ride this train in. He has been out there on the ground every day, somewhere in 12 county districts working. So David has my full support. I've known him for many years, and all I can ask you to do is just get out there and let's work for David, and let's send a true conservative, not a flip-flopper, but a true conservative to Washington, D.C. for the 7th Congressional District. David, that was my question.
Thank you for the introduction, Brent. Appreciate it. Now, are there any questions that anybody may have? Some of you got here just a little after I finished the majority of my spiel. Good to see you.
We thought they were flawed when we walked in.
It was for y'all and Lauch Faircloth, wherever Senator Faircloth went.
He had to run the kids up and he
Oh,
right
okay.
back.
Okay. I was going to say, you don't look quite like Lauch Faircloth.
About as much gray hair.
Yeah. But I'm sure somebody has a question or something, and with an informal environment, this is a good time to ask anything that you want to ask.
Tell us how you would vote on trade deals with the United States and other nations.
Well, I'm for free trade, but it's got to be fair. And I think one of the things that we've got to do as a country is we've got to recognize that capital goes where it's welcome. We have the highest corporate income tax rate in the world. We have more rules and regulations in place than any other country in the world. The labor costs are higher here than anywhere else. You take all that together, and there's no wonder, that business goes elsewhere. And so sometimes a lot of people get upset about various trade deals, when in fact it's really not necessarily the trade deal that is as big a problem as it is the environment, the business environment that we've created in this country. We need to cut the corporate income tax. In fact, I'd be in favor of getting rid of it completely, because corporations don't pay taxes. People do. People pay it in the form of lost job opportunity and lower wages. They pay it in the form of higher prices, and the shareholders pay it in the form of lost revenue. So it's really not the corporation that's losing the money. It's the people that are being taxed, not the corporation, because that all gets passed on in some form. And I think we've got to reform our tax code. Right now, you've got 50% of people paying taxes, the other 50% are not. You got 50% pulling the wagon, and 50% riding in it. I guess it's great if you're riding in it. It's not so good if you're the one pulling it. But the problem is, more and more people that are riding in it, it gets heavier and heavier to pull, and it basically comes to a halt. And that's not good for anybody. And that's about where we are as a country. And I saw something the other day that really was very profound. Right now, in this country, the standard of living has declined and is continuing to decline, so much so that you have to go back to World War II to find a similar period, similar situation. And I got to thinking about that, and I said, well, if you look at history, whenever a country has a debt that's equal to its national GDP, the standard of living always begins to decline. That's where we are. So not only do we have the debt burden, but we have policies in place that make it almost impossible to do business anymore. I was watching John Stossel one Sunday. I try to do every once in a while. I kind of like John. And he's more of a libertarian, I guess, but very, very much free market oriented. And he had a line of CEOs of companies. I think Staples was one of them, and Best Buy, and a few others. And he asked every single one of those CEOs, he said, could you start your business today? And every single one of them said no. The rules and regulations are such that you just can't do it. And I keep talking about rules and regulations because that's one of my interests. You know, the state legislature, I co-chair the Reg Reform Committee, because from all my time with Helms and Doe